by saying what he did in the war. He was never on the front line, but he was in a clerk in the pay section because he signed up underage.
I was just going to say, didn't he put his age up to be in the war?
Signed up. He wasn't the correct
Do you know
age.
how old he was?
I think he joined in late 1944, so he would have been 16.
When was what was his birth date and year again?
22nd of February 1927.
Right, that's right.
So he would have been 17 just, maybe?
To think about that.
Yeah, anyhow. So he was underage.
So he put himself up to be in the war because he would have, that probably at that time would have, like a lot of young men, would have been an exciting venture.
Absolutely.
And so you said he was a clerk though.
He was a pay clerk, yeah.
And where did he base himself?
He was based in Port Moresby, I think.
So he was
the
based
Japanese were in New Guinea. So I suppose being in North Queensland, there was always that threat, that came that if there was an invasion, the North would suffer, and there'd already been bombings in Darwin and those areas. So I think in the North they felt a bit vulnerable.
Right.
So I think, didn't they have the line as Brisbane? That was the line they defended.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the Americans and the Australians decided Brisbane would be the line where they'd defend. So anything north of that, if it had been invaded.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was just going to be invaded, so it would defend
Well, I
from
think
Brisbane.
that was the scenario.
Okay, so he basically went over as a 17-year-old, maybe late 16-year-old, and was based in Port Moresby.
Yeah.
But so he would have had to have had basic training though in the army. Having
He
said
went
that,
in through in Nogra, I think.
through a Nogra.
Yeah, but I think was it the Air Force he was in, right?
Yeah.
It's Air Force, yeah.
So it would have been the Air Force in
but, yeah.
Amberley there, maybe via the training
He
there.
did basic training for. I don't know exactly where he did his basic training.
Do you know, Rod, that? Do you know where he did his basic training?
I do not know.
So then he went to Port Moresby. Do you know how long he was there for? Well,
Very short time. He
well,
was
the
there.
war finished in 1945, didn't it? So
I think that he always lamented the fact that he wasn't in the army or the Air Force enough time to get a war service loan.
to get a
When
loan.
to get a, they used to give you war service loans to buy a home if you'd been in the Defence Force.
Oh, so I wonder
When
how
you
long you
came
had
back.
to be in for
And
that.
I think he was so many days short of.
Oh,
qualifying.
really?
And also with his gold card and all that, he was just short of that time. Because
So-
the war ended, which
Yep.
no one expected.
So he never had
No
as
one
much as
knew.
we all wanted, everyone wanted the war to end, he missed out on the advantage of
the
life
advantage of
that a lot of people had, I guess.
But he
That's,
did come out without any injuries or anything like that,
And he had
Other
four
than what
beautiful
he
children.
saw. And what he
Wasn't so
saw.
much of his scar as well.
No, so that's true. Did he talk about that he saw anything? Do you remember? Or was he mainly in an office situation, so he didn't actually
talked
see?
about it. There are photos we found, remember, and all this stuff of some gruesome war pictures. And I think he had a few coins or things in his little collection, but I don't know whose they were.
So after that then, the war finished, he came back from Port Moresby, and then what was the time?
Back to Bowen.
Back to Bowen?
Yeah, back
And what
to
happened?
Bowen.
Is
Was
that when he met
working-
your mother?
I think he was working in the business, and then
That would have
because
been
it was
his parents' shop,
haberdashery.
was it?
Yeah,
Parents'
it's
shop in-
haberdashery, and
There's still the same shop
clothing.
that was there today? Is that shop? Or
That shop is burned down. No, the original shop is not there.
what address was
Burnt
that?
down.
Do you know? Or
Same street.
Herbert Street,
Herbert Street?
but just further down, like towards the port.
Was it called Meehan's Menswear too? Or
It was called Meehan's Valencia store.
Meehan's Valencia? And that was his mum and dad's business?
What's
Was
Valencia
his-
mean?
What does Valencia?
I think it's something to do with, I'm not sure, Valencia.
Okay.
Google it,
I
A
wasn't sure
Right.
whether, because grandfather's name was Valentine, I'm not sure whether it was something to do with that or not. I
So
never
that
knew
was
why.
his father's business, but his mother worked in it. His mother ran it. So, okay. So then he came back and started working in that
He
business.
worked in the business, which he always knew as a child.
Oh, wow, Lizzie. Lizzie just threw a frog on the side of the mountain as we're heading towards. Where are we heading towards again?
Malanda, I think it ends off at.
Malanda. We're heading up the range to the Atherton Tablelands, is that right?
Yep,
Atherton Tablelands. So this is our drive down the Meehan family history lane.
So we'll come to Youngborough first. probably go via Malanda. I don't know how we get there.
European Point, honey, and we were going
We're
from
coming
there.
up here.
There we go. Okay.
To
so we're doing
Youngabara.
the history journey.
Not too sure how we'll get to Herberton.
Okay.
Via Mellabella.
Okay. So he worked in his parents' business, and then what happened? I guess it goes on to the timeline of him meeting your mother.
So that's where he obviously started to be commercial travel. That's where his history was in haberdashery and those things.
Because he would have learnt about it. It's a bit like his apprenticeship, wasn't it?
Yes. And so it was natural, I suppose, that he stayed in the business. I think he was a pretty good salesman.
He would have been fantastic because he had the gift of the gab, wouldn't he?
Was a
So
bit of a chatter.
yeah.
Obviously, he had doubts about things in life. But yeah. So he was happy enough to do that as a career.
He was good at forging relationships, but is what it was.
Because he could talk to anyone,
Certainly
couldn't he?
keeping them alive, you know, because he's the only person who ever really connected all the brothers, really, and his sisters.
Well, he didn't do a great job of that because I only ever met the niece when I was.
I do have some letters that you can photograph that he wrote, that his mother wrote to him, and
Okay.
things like that.
Oh, that would be lovely to see, wouldn't it? That would be nice to have a look at. So
So he met Mum.
how did they meet? Do you know?
Well, Mum worked at Bowen Evans, which is a competition, I suppose, for their store.
Oh, so I wonder how that went down.
Yeah, so she worked there.
Yeah, that's right, with the opposition. Romeo and Juliet.
And it could be that one of the girls who worked in Dad's shop, Grandma Meehan's shop, was a friend of Mum's. I think Elsie Wiseman, her name was. I think she was a friend of Mum's.
Ah, okay.
So whether that's how it happened, I don't know. But anyhow, that's how they met. And then
Sure.
1949, 27th of December, right?
The 27th, Rod probably doesn't know, does he?
I think it
And they
might
got
be
married.
The 30th of December they got married.
And they were married where?
Married in Bowen.
At the church, the
We
Catholic
have
church?
photos
Or
of
because your father's
in the
Catholic, but
Catholic
your mother's
church.
family's not
Mum
Catholic.
converted.
What was she? Church of England, was
Church
she?
of England, yeah.
Like, okay.
Which my grandmother was bitterly against.
Oh, she was bitterly against.
Bitterly against
her-
converting. And
Was she a practicing Anglican?
Everyone was.
Probably everyone was back then.
Gran went to church.
I think everyone did.
Yeah.
But Gran has her own story of how her brother was killed by a Catholic.
Oh, right.
Irishman.
Probably.
So she had personal grudges.
Which lasted forever,
my
really, didn't it?
grandfather, in all his wisdom, said, you know, you can't do this. He called Gran Joe. You can't stop her doing this. You know, so he allowed it to go ahead. So Mum converted and got married in the Catholic Church.
That's the history of women converting for men too, isn't it? It was sort of a common thing, wasn't it? The women converted for men.
They always convert that way.
Oh, I just think because
I
Mum.
know there's photos of them getting on the plane to fly to Brisbane for their
honeymoon. So December 1949. Sorry, so they got married, and in the church, probably the Catholic Church in Bowen. I'm assuming there's probably only one.
There was only one.
And they come to Brisbane for their honeymoon, didn't they? Is that when they went to Cloudland or?
Yeah, Cloudland.
And
that photo of Cloudland was
actually,
their
wasn't it the Gold Coast, Rod? Didn't Kev used to say they went to the
What is
Gold
Cloudland?
Coast?
What is Cloudland?
Cloudland was a dance hall, a big dance hall, place on top of near the back of the showgrounds in Brisbane. Big dance floor up there called Cloudlands. Everyone went there to dance.
Tom went there recently.
Yeah, he did actually, because it's all been done up.
It's all been the original dance
Yeah,
floor.
have you been there, Liz?
You might have been in this.
It's cool. Is it like it's a nice bar?
Yeah, it's a really trendy place now.
I have been there.
There you go. So your
I used to go there when I
grandfather,
was nursing. We always went there to dances up there.
so they went there, but they just went there for a dance, or they
would have gone
stayed
there to
there?
dance.
Because you couldn't stay
No,
there, could you?
didn't stay there.
Because, Rod, didn't they say they went to that pub in the Gold Coast in Southport to stay for the honeymoon? Because I think they pointed it out, didn't they? Southport. What's it called? Because sometimes we see it there. I thought that's where they went for a few days.
Yeah, the one on Scarlet
out
Street.
on
I can't think of the name, but we'll have to.
On the water.
Is it out
Yeah,
the that
I
old
can't
pub?
remember.
No, the
I think it's a
this is
step
the one
back.
that they lived in, because Mum and Dad lived there for a while at that pub.
Yeah. So they had their honeymoon
So-
there, And then what happened? They went back to Bowen?
Do you know, I don't know whether they ever went back to Bowen. Whether that's when they moved down to Brisbane.
So
No,
it's
Brisbane in Nogra.
Yeah, so they rented, I think, in Brisbane. At Alderley, I know they rented one property.
okay, so they were in
We've got
Alderley.
receipts and things of rent. And
Okay.
then they ended up buying a place at Alderley as well.
So what was your father doing then? What was his job?
He was still working in the north.
Oh, so he went back and forth.
So he must have went back and Mum moved down.
Okay.
So I know that Mum was down there on her own for a while, and Grandmother Hammond went down to stay with her
Okay.
when I was born.
So you were born then, so they were.
I was born less than a year,
So he was.
24th December after.
Okay, so you were born 24th of December 1950, as we said before.
Yeah.
And so you were born in what hospital?
Brisbane Women's Hospital.
The Brisbane Women's Hospital. And so that's their stint during Brisbane, and at that point your father was possibly going back and forth from North Queensland. Was he like a travelling salesman at that point?
There's a letter somewhere.
There are letters.
Where Mum and Dad are separated by distance.
Yes.
Talking
There's a
about
few
UN.
letters. So, yeah.
So we'll have to find those. So was he working in the actual...
Something about being a naughty baby and stuff like
Yeah. How I got lost in Gardens and they couldn't find me. She went to town.
We'll have to find that
I
letter.
was hiding under a bench. or
Oh
something.
gosh,
that.
okay.
It was nice about you, but there's definitely a distance between them.
So they had the distance. So
So I'm not sure whether they lived down there, bought the house, which they must have, and whatever work he was doing didn't turn out, and he went back north to work. Because I think in those letters they talk about her having to sell up and sell everything to go back up north.
so possibly he did have a position
So he got a
in
position
Brisbane
in
initially.
Cairns.
And
Yeah.
Post and Rita Bruce.
Yeah, I do think they had someone they knew might have been his godfather or godmother, or might have been my godmother. Were people that lived down in Brisbane and worked at his business.
so it started
So
there, and then
maybe
he
it
had to
didn't
go.
work
Okay, so then possibly.
Was it Post and Rita Bruce in Cairns?
Sorry,
Who was it? Was it Post and Rita Bruce or Harry Hopkins?
in Cairns.
Speak
it
up, Rob.
was-
It had to be Harry Hopkins.
I think it was Hollis Hopkins. I think it was Hollis Hopkins in Cairns. Yes.
Is that a name of a store or is that a name of a person?
That was a big company based in Townsville who had warehouses through the north here,
So that's
selling the same types of stuff that Dad did. Yeah.
okay. So he then probably was working in Cairns, maybe, or somewhere
I
in
think
North
he must have
Queensland
been
while
working
you
in
were.
Cairns.
So do you know how long your mother was in Brisbane for before you went back to Cairns? Do you know how old you were when you went to Cairns?
I think it might have had something to do with the fact that my grandfather died on the February after I was born. He died.
So it was 51. He died.
Just a month or so after I was born.
So which grandfather was that?
Grandmother Meehan's husband,
Right,
Joseph Valentine.
Joseph Valentine. Okay.
So whether that had some impact on him going back to the north, I don't know, because there was
Was he
Grandmother
close
was
with
on
his
his own.
grandparents? Do you know?
his mother.
He was
His
close
own
with
father
his.
died.
Oh, his own father.
His father
Sorry.
died, Joseph
Yeah.
Valentine died.
Right. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So
Okay. So do you remember how old you were then when you turned up to Cairns?
not exactly. I would say I know when I was 18 months old I got quite ill
Oh,
from some sort of chest infection,
Okay.
and I was in Cairns Base Hospital, so it would have been under that time. I would
Okay.
say I was probably between 1 and
Okay. So they didn't have a long time in Brisbane. No. Okay. So you were enough time for you to be born there.
enough time to be born there. Another reason I think Mum stayed in Brisbane was she had chicken pox as a child, and she was scarred. Her eardrum was scarred, so she was always deaf.
Oh, really? From a young age?
From very young
Oh,
child.
wow.
So she, there's a lookout here.
Yeah, he's looking.
Ooh.
No.
We're about to have a little look at it here, but so she
So
moved there to be
had
close to a
stay in
specialist? Or?
Brisbane to have surgery on her ear. She had oral fenestration, how they fenestrate.
And did that work in the end? Did that help her?
I think it helped her a lot. But you know, it's quite painful and all those sorts of things.
Definitely
And
cooler up here.
Did she know anybody in Brisbane? Did she have any family or friends?
That's why I think grandmother spent a lot of time here.
Oh, okay.
And then maybe brought her back up, helped her back up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.